On August 19th, something happens in Washington that most people will scroll right past, and that could be a very expensive mistake. The Federal Reserve is releasing the minutes from its July meeting, the meeting where policymakers voted 9-3 to hold interest rates steady. 3 dissenters. All 3 wanted rates higher, not lower. And that kind of split at the Fed hasn't happened since 2016. Now here's why this matters if you own gold, silver, or you're thinking about buying either one. Because these minutes could reveal something the market isn't fully pricing in yet. And that could determine whether gold and silver are preparing for their next major move, or whether the recent rally was already the top. Gold and silver have just gone through one of the wildest runs in their history. Gold surged past $5,000 an ounce and peaked just under $5,600 in late January. Silver did something even more extreme, rocketing from around $40 an ounce to $116 in roughly the same stretch. A move of nearly 200%. Then both metals pulled back hard. Gold settled into the low 4,000s, while silver drifted back into the $50 and $60 range through the summer. So here's the question that matters now. Was that the top? Or was it just a pause before the next leg higher? Most people will tell you the answer depends on the Fed. But here's the problem. The Fed's decision isn't the only thing you need to watch. The real clue may be buried inside those July meeting minutes, and on August 19th, we're finally going to see it. If you own gold, own silver, or are thinking about buying either one, or you're simply trying to understand where interest rates, inflation, savings, mortgages, and the economy are heading, this is something you don't want to miss. If you're the kind of person who pays attention to money, investing, gold, silver, and what's actually happening in the economy, instead of just the headlines, this is the channel for that. Subscribe to Money Insiders and like this video. We break these stories down in plain English. No jargon, no noise, just what you actually need to understand. Let's start with what we already know, because the known part of the story is strange enough on its own. On July 29th, Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh and the rest of the Federal Open Market Committee voted to keep the federal funds rate exactly where it was, a range of 3.5% to 3.75%. That's the 5th straight meeting without a change. On the surface, that sounds boring. Stability, no surprises. But look at the vote itself, because that's where the story actually begins. 9 members voted to hold, 3 voted against it, and all 3 wanted to raise rates, not lower them. That's a unified hawkish revolt inside the Fed, the first one shaped like that in almost a decade. Historically, dissents at the Fed are rare enough to make headlines by themselves. A 3-person block, pushing in the same direction, on the same day, under a brand new chair who has been in the job only a matter of months. That's not routine. That's friction. And friction inside the group that sets the price of money in America is exactly the kind of thing that eventually shows up in the price of gold. Now here's what most people don't realize, and it's worth pausing on because it changes how you should read everything that follows. The public statement the Fed releases on decision day is short, deliberately short. Chair Warsh has actually made a point of shrinking it, telling reporters he wants to change how the Fed communicates and stop over-explaining its own thinking in real time. That's unusual. Prior Fed chairs leaned on forward guidance. Hints, phrases, careful language, designed to tell markets what's coming next before it happens. Warsh has pulled back from that, which means the 2-page statement investors got on July 29th tells you what the Fed decided, but not why 3 people were furious enough to vote no. That explanation on the actual argument, the data each side pointed to, the language they used to make their case, doesn't show up until the minutes are published. And the minutes for this exact meeting are scheduled for release on August 19th, 3 weeks after the decision, exactly as the Fed's own calendar requires. In other words, everyone has been trading gold and silver for 3 weeks based on half the story. August 19th is when we get the other half. So why does a room full of economists arguing matter to someone who has never bought a single ounce of gold in their life? Here's the plain English version. When the Fed raises interest rates, it becomes more expensive to borrow money. Mortgages, credit cards, business loans, all of it. That's meant to cool off inflation by slowing down spending. When the Fed holds rates or cuts them, borrowing gets cheaper. But the risk is that prices keep climbing faster than paychecks do. Gold and silver sit right in the middle of that tug of war, because neither metal pays you interest. When interest rates are high and expected to stay high, holding a pile of non-yielding metal starts to look less attractive compared to a savings account or a Treasury bond that's actually paying you something. But when rates look like they're going to come down, or when investors start worrying that inflation is going to eat away at the value of cash faster than any bond can compensate for, gold and silver start looking like protection instead of a missed opportunity. That tension, rates versus inflation fear, is precisely what those 3 dissenting Fed officials were fighting about in that room in July. And it's precisely what the minutes on August 19th are going to reveal in far more detail than the headline vote ever could. Now, here's where the story gets more interesting, because the backdrop to this meeting wasn't quiet. Oil prices had been swinging wildly for weeks, driven by an ongoing conflict involving the United States and Iran that had already pushed crude up more than 20% in July alone. Energy costs feed directly into inflation, because everything from gasoline to shipping to manufacturing runs on it. So even as the labor market was sending one signal, energy prices were sending another, and the Fed was stuck trying to referee both at once. That's the environment those three dissenting officials were operating in. They looked at rising oil, they looked at inflation still sitting above the Fed's 2% target, and they decided the risk of doing nothing outweighed the risk of raising rates. 9 of their colleagues disagreed. That's not a small disagreement. That's a genuine fork in the road. And the minutes are the transcript of exactly how that argument played out. Here's the detail that changes the picture even further. Just one day before the July meeting wrapped up, the government released the June jobs report, and it showed the economy added only 57,000 jobs, well below what economists had penciled in. Then just over a week after the meeting, the July jobs report came out, and it was worse, not slower growth. Actual job losses, 23,000 positions lost, compared to the 80,000 new jobs Wall Street had expected. That's not a rounding error. That's a labor market that may be cracking in a way the Fed didn't fully see coming when it made its July decision. Think about the timing here. The Fed voted to hold rates on July 29th, partly because inflation still looked sticky. Then, within days, fresh data suggested the job market was weakening faster than anyone assumed. If that's true, the minutes released on August 19th might read like they're describing an economy that no longer exists, a snapshot of a debate that the real world had already started to outrun by the time it hits your screen. What does that actually mean for someone watching this video? If you're a worker, a weakening labor market with elevated inflation is about as uncomfortable a combination as there is. It raises the odds of a scenario economists call stagflation, where prices keep climbing even as job growth stalls, and there's no single interest rate move that fixes both problems at once. If you're a saver, this is the tug of war made personal. Higher rates for longer means your savings account or CD keeps paying you more, but it also means borrowing stays expensive for the small businesses that might otherwise be hiring. If you're a homeowner or thinking about buying, mortgage rates are directly tied to where the market thinks the Fed is heading over the next year, and right now that direction is genuinely contested. And if you're holding gold or silver or thinking about it, you're sitting in an asset whose two biggest price drivers, interest rate expectations and inflation fear, are both actively in play at the same time, pulling in different directions. But this is where the historical record becomes useful, because we've actually seen a version of this movie before. In past cycles, where the Fed held rates steady while inflation stayed uncomfortably high, gold has historically performed well, because investors start treating it as insurance against the possibility that the central bank is behind the curve. On the other hand, in cycles where the Fed signaled it was leaning toward tightening, raising rates, or even just talking tougher about doing so, gold has historically struggled in the short term because higher expected returns on safer assets like bonds pull money away from metals that pay no yield at all. That's exactly why the $5,600 peak in January and the pullback that followed aren't a contradiction. They're the same tug of war showing up in a single chart. Gold ran hard while the market expected the Fed to eventually ease. It pulled back as hawkish voices, like the three dissenters in July, got louder and made a near-term rate increase feel more plausible again. Now look at what happened next, because the market has already been quietly repricing this fight in real time. In the days after the July meeting, a cooler than expected reading on producer prices, a measure of inflation at the wholesale level before it reaches consumers, caused traders to lower the odds of a rate hike at the September meeting from around 40% down to roughly 35%. That might sound like a small shift, but it tells you something important. The market isn't waiting for August 19 to start making guesses. It's adjusting, meeting by meeting, data point by data point, trying to get ahead of a Fed that has deliberately made itself harder to read. The minutes matter precisely because they're the one moment where the guessing stops and the actual internal argument becomes public. Every trader, every fund manager, every gold desk on Wall Street will be reading those minutes on August 19th, not for the decision, we already know the decision, but for the language. Was the disagreement described as a genuine split, or were the three dissenters treated as outliers? Did the committee discuss the weakening jobs data at all, or was that report too fresh to make it into the conversation? Did anyone flag the oil-driven inflation risk as temporary, or as something more persistent? Those specific words will move markets in the minutes and hours after release. And gold and silver, sitting exactly at the intersection of rate expectations and inflation fear, will likely be among the first assets to react. There's another side to this that often gets overlooked, and it has to do with silver specifically rather than gold. Silver isn't just a monetary metal. More than half its demand comes from industrial use, everything from solar panels to electronics to healthcare equipment. That means silver doesn't just respond to what the Fed does, it also responds to how the broader economy is doing, because industrial demand rises and falls with manufacturing and construction activity. Right now, the gold to silver ratio, a simple measure of how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold, sits close to 68, which by historical standards still leaves silver looking cheap relative to gold, even after this summer's advance. Some analysts see that gap as a signal that silver has further room to run if industrial demand holds up and precious metal sentiment stays strong. Others see it as a warning sign that if the economy actually does slow down the way the July jobs report suggested, industrial demand for silver could soften right as inflation fears are pushing gold higher, meaning the two metals, usually seen as a matched pair, could start moving for genuinely different reasons. That's a scenario a lot of casual investors haven't fully considered, because gold and silver get lumped together so often that people forget they respond to different parts of the economy. Here's a piece of everyday money math that makes all of this less abstract. When people talk about interest rates being high or low, what actually matters for an asset like gold isn't the rate itself. It's what's called the real yield, which is simply the interest rate minus the inflation rate. If a savings account pays you 4%, but inflation is running at 3%, your real after-inflation return is only about 1%. If inflation climbs to 4% while your rate stays the same, your real return drops to roughly zero. You're treading water. That's the exact mechanism connecting the Fed's decision to gold's price. When real yields fall, because the Fed holds rates while inflation stays elevated, which is precisely what critics of the July decision are worried about, gold tends to become more attractive because the opportunity cost of holding a non-yielding asset shrinks. When real yields rise, because the Fed hikes or because inflation cools faster than rates do, gold tends to face more pressure. The 3 dissenting votes in July were, in plain terms, arguing that the Fed was letting real yields drift too low for comfort. Whether they were right is exactly what the August 19th minutes will help clarify. But the numbers tell a more complicated story than a simple gold goes up if rates stay low narrative would suggest. And this is the reality check worth sitting with. Gold's massive run to nearly $5,600 happened during a period when rate cut expectations were building. Its pullback since then happened as those hawkish voices gained ground, and a rate increase became a live possibility again. If the August 19th minutes reveal that the committee's internal debate was closer than the 9-3 vote suggested, more members privately sympathetic to the hawks than their public vote indicated, that could reinforce the idea that rates stay higher for longer, which, historically, has been a headwind for gold in the short run, even if the metal has still managed to hold near record territory this year on sheer inflation anxiety and geopolitical uncertainty. On the other hand, if the minutes show that even the majority who voted to hold were doing so reluctantly, worried about the weakening jobs data that arrived just after the meeting, that could be read as an opening for rate cuts later in the year, historically a tailwind for gold and potentially for silver alongside it. Both outcomes are plausible. Neither is guaranteed. That uncertainty is exactly why so much market attention is converging on a single Wednesday afternoon in August. Zoom out further, and you can see this moment as part of a much longer pattern in how gold behaves around central bank uncertainty. Historically, gold has tended to do best not simply when rates are low, but specifically when there's confusion or disagreement about where policy is headed, because uncertainty itself is something investors pay to hedge against. A unified, predictable Fed, whether it's clearly hiking or clearly cutting, tends to give markets a stable narrative to trade around. A divided Fed, one issuing its shortest statements in years under a chair who has explicitly said he doesn't want to oversignal, is the opposite of that. It creates exactly the kind of fog that has historically pushed some investors toward gold as a form of insurance, regardless of which direction rates eventually move. That's part of why gold has stayed within striking distance of its record highs, even after pulling back several $100s from the January peak. The uncertainty itself hasn't gone away. It's just changed shape. It's also worth remembering that this isn't happening in a vacuum. Chair Warsh is scheduled to speak at the Jackson Hole Economic Policy Symposium in the days after the minutes are released, and that speech, along with the minutes themselves, will set the tone heading into the Fed's next meeting on September 15th and 16th. That means August 19th isn't really the end of this story, it's the middle of it. The minutes will tell us how divided the Fed was in July. Jackson Hole will tell us how the chair wants markets to interpret that division. And the September meeting will tell us whether the 3 dissenters were early or simply wrong. Gold and silver traders don't get to wait for all 3 answers before deciding what to do with their money. They have to price in probabilities the whole way through, adjusting position by position as each new piece of information lands. That's exactly what's been happening with the shifting odds on a September rate hike. And it's exactly what will happen again the moment the minutes hit the wire on August 19th. So where does that leave someone watching this video who isn't a professional trader, just a person trying to make a sensible decision about their money? The honest answer is that nobody can tell you with certainty what gold or silver will do after August 19th, and anyone who guarantees you an outcome is selling you something other than the truth. What the evidence does support is this. The Fed is more internally divided than it has been in years. That division centers on a genuine and unresolved tension between still elevated inflation and a labor market that may be weakening faster than expected. And gold and silver are, by their nature, the assets most sensitive to exactly that kind of tension. Some analysts expect gold to trade in a wide range through the rest of the year, with figures based on how that inflation versus growth debate resolves. Others see room for silver, specifically to keep closing the historical gap with gold if industrial demand holds up. Neither view is a certainty. Both are reasonable interpretations of the same uncertain picture. What the minutes actually give you, more than a prediction, is a mental model. A way to read the next piece of Fed news, and the one after that, without getting whipsawed by headlines. Watch the language, not just the vote count. Watch whether the committee's internal debate matches or contradicts what the public statement implied. Watch how real yields move, not just where the nominal interest rate sits. And watch whether gold and silver start moving together or start drifting apart, because that split alone can tell you whether the market is pricing in a monetary story, an industrial story, or both at once. None of this requires you to buy or sell anything. It requires you to understand what you're looking at the next time a headline says the Fed did something, so you can ask the better question underneath it. Not just what did they decide, but what did they actually disagree about, and why? That's the real answer to the question this title raised. The Fed minutes on August 19th aren't going to hand anyone a guaranteed trade. What they're going to do is finally show the argument that's been happening behind a 2-page statement for the past 3 weeks. The argument between a committee majority holding steady and a hawkish minority worried that waiting too long carries its own risk. Gold and silver have already been pricing pieces of that argument in, rising and falling as the odds shifted week to week. The minutes won't end the uncertainty. If anything, they're likely to sharpen it, giving both the bulls and the bears in the gold market fresh ammunition depending on exactly how that internal debate reads. What's certain is only this. A Fed this divided, sitting on top of an economy sending contradictory signals, is precisely the environment history says is worth paying close attention to, not because it guarantees where prices go, but because it's exactly the kind of moment that tends to separate the people who understood what was happening from the people who only saw the headline. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insiders and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next. This video is AI generated